My name is Rodney Goodbun, and I'm involved with a group called Action Reform Change Queensland, which is a group of gay men, lesbians, bisexual, transgender people and supporters that work to advocate for equality before the law in Queensland in relation to queer matters.
Now, what do you understand about the existence of an unequal age of consent in Queensland and its effects? What would your group's attitude be to this?
Well, we know that the law in relation to anal sex is different to the law in relation to vaginal sex, that the vaginal intercourse, it's legal to do that at age 16. So people undertaking anal intercourse at ages 17 are a criminal under the Queensland law. We can find no policy basis for this, no health basis for this. The only basis one might claim for this different law is as a moral one, and if it's a moral argument, then it's a moral argument around sexuality that really doesn't stand up to tests of what community values are these days in relation to these issues. I've worked in sexual health for about 18 years now, in a number of capacities, in a voluntary capacity, in HIV prevention, as a researcher, as a adult trainer and educator, and I found there's a really interesting development in the way people think about sexuality over the last 18 years or so. We've become much easier at talking about sexual acts, thinking about the ways in which sexuality should or should not be regulated. But this area of legislation where anal intercourse is still considered to be, under Queensland law, somehow an extreme activity that needs to be regulated is out of step with the way in which we think about the rest of the range of sexual behaviours. It's interesting that even though there's been a lot of information in the public domain about sexuality, about issues like HIV/AIDS and now hepatitis, there's still a level of discomfort in talking about the nitty-gritty of sexuality. The language around it is still uncomfortable for many people. I think it's important that we are able to conduct a public debate, to have a public discourse, an informed one, where we're able to talk about vaginal intercourse, anal intercourse, oral intercourse and other forms of love and expression without being squeamish about it. And that's something I think that our organisation, along with HIV/AIDS organisations and family planning organisations, have been working towards for many, many years.
Mm-hmm. Now, Action Reform Change Queensland is working towards equality for same-sex attracted individuals and couples in a range of areas. But does the organisation feel that it's particularly important that people are treated with equity at all ages, rather than just as over 18 adults?
Well, if we ask the counter question, why should someone be treated differently, you would have to mount an argument on the basis of health reasons or reasons relating to psychosocial issues as to why that would be the case. There isn't any evidence, there simply isn't any evidence to suggest that one form of sexual expression, i.e. anal intercourse, is more harmful or risky than another form of sexual intercourse, i.e. vaginal intercourse. There are ways in which both kinds of activities can be risky or harmful to people engaged in them. If sex is happening through coercion, if there's risk of sexual transmission of infections, then obviously that activity can be harmful. But there are ways and means in which society is working to minimise those risks through education, through promotion of condom use, through promotion of resilience and self-advocacy and self-esteem and confidence building so that people know what consensual sex is about and how they should ask for it. There are ways in which we're learning as a society to deal with these issues. Having a differential age of consent for vaginal sex and anal intercourse is really not part of the suite these days. It's not part of a helpful range of strategies to promote confident young sexually expressive people who can ask for and know what they want.
Now, British comedian Ricky Gervais, I've heard him as part of his stand-up routine make the comment that in Britain, when there was campaigning for an equal age of consent, he didn't see youth marching down the street demanding an equal age of consent. And this is what some politicians will be saying regarding Queensland's unequal age of consent, that they would expect that youth would be demanding it. Do you think that it's fair that it should be expected that youth, who are perhaps the most disadvantaged people because of this law, should be out demanding that it be reformed?
Well, I would think if you were to poll young people, you'd get a very clear view of what they would like from the lawmakers in relation to their expression and their right to choose. We tend not to ask young people. That's the question that we could be posing. What if we asked young people, or why don't we ask young people what these laws should be about and how they should be constructed? Young people will advocate when they have the opportunity, but our society and our political process tends to lock them out. So it's not surprising that you don't see people marching down the street. In addition to that, these issues are issues where people, particularly for young gay or lesbian people, or for people expressing, questioning themselves about their sexuality, it's often not the kind of place where they're going to undertake that questioning behaviour. They're not. If they're wondering about their sexual identity, you're not likely to see them campaigning in front of Parliament House. You're likely to see them sort of worrying in their bedrooms about what their future is, or perhaps ringing a counselling line. Political expression, political advocacy is something that does tend to come from people who are self-confident and mature and asserting their rights. So no, it's not surprising you don't see young people marching down the street, but I think we should be asking them what they'd like, and I'd be very surprised if they didn't say they'd like the right to choose.
Lovely. Rod Goodbun from Action Reform Change Queensland, thank you very much.
Cheers.